Today we downloaded a mod that adds 3 new races to Worldbox. The Goblins, the Hive, and the Lizard Men. And we're gonna watch them kill each other. I decided to start off every nation with 100 population, and to spawn them far enough away from each other so that they have room to expand. In the top left, the Goblin Nation, the Zera Pig. In the top right, the Hive Nation, Bomb a Call. And at the bottom, the Lizard Nation, Are, however you say that. Straight off, the Lizard Men began to get to work. Construction began on the necessities of a new civilization, a campfire for warmth, and a single tent that literally hundreds of them can fit in somehow. The goblins also followed suit, constructing housing and warmth of their own, as well as the Hive, who built, whatever these things are. Of the 3 nations, the lizards were the first to expand, sending out 18 colonists to establish the new colony Felona, which just happened to be built right next to the original colony. Meanwhile, just north of them, hard times were falling on the goblins. As no crops were growing in this unforgiving landscape, many of them died of hunger, resulting in a loss of nearly half their colonists. I decided to be merciful and grant them some berry bushes, as well as some livestock to harvest. Soon enough, the goblins began to regain their footing. But after such a loss, who knows how long it would take for them to fully recover. But as the goblins struggled to recover, the Hive began to flourish. Now with enough housing for nearly all their population, the Hive began to shift their priorities, developing the technology for aquatic travel, as well as the start of a new military, led by this man, Ihowri, and his lucky stick. Meanwhile, the lizards, now rapidly increasing in population, also began to develop a military, forging deadly weapons of war such as the legendary axe
Annihilation.
On top of creating a powerful military, the lizards also began to undertake some ambitious architectural projects, such as giant pyramids, as well as, actually I think that's all. The time had quickly come though, for the lizards to finally show their strength. An evil wizard from an ancient age had come to threaten their empire. They sent in their full forces, attempting to subdue the wizard before he could reach civilization. And eventually they were successful, but not without suffering heavy losses. Even still, with their first victory behind them, the lizards became overconfident and hungry for blood. They quickly declared war on both the goblins and the Hive, hoping to claim the island for their own. The goblins were their first target. Sending the full force of their army, the lizards made quick work of the southern area of their capital, killing not just the men, but the women and the children. The goblins, after fighting for days on end, were eventually able to fend off the lizards. But rest assured, they had not seen the last of them. A new army, even more ruthless than the last, was descending upon the goblins' capital, led by the famous Fua, the killer of the evil mage and hero of the Lizard Empire. The lizards made quick work of the goblins, their numbers dropping rapidly. But as the Goblin Empire weakened, and the lizard soldiers became more and more exhausted, the Hive saw an opportunity. They sent out 2 armies, one with the purpose of finishing off the lizard soldiers and claiming the now weak Goblin Empire, and the other to flank the Lizard Empire while they were distracted. The Hive clashed with the lizard soldiers, who, despite being exhausted from days of war, still put up a good fight, but were eventually subdued. Meanwhile, the Hive's army had been discovered in the southeast, and were being met with resistance. The lizards didn't have much in terms of defense, but they still managed to keep the Hive at bay.
At least for now.
To the north, the Goblin Empire was on its last legs. Nearly every structure the goblins had built had been turned to ash, and the last remaining survivors were being hunted down. Soon, there were none left. While the Hive focused on eradicating the Goblin Empire though, the lizards had been building an army that spelled doom for the Hive. Von Asaor was their first target, but rest assured it would not be an easy take. The Hive were not going to go down without a fight, going as far as to send their own citizens off to fend off the invasion. And eventually, they were successful in their defense, but not without suffering heavy casualties. However, the impending threat they'd now come face to face with had given the Hive citizens an ultimatum. It was either fight or face the extinction of their race, and many of them chose to fight. The lizards attacked the Hive on 2 fronts, half their army going to Von Asaor and the other half heading for the Hive's capital. This forced the Hive to make a difficult decision. Were they to risk splitting up their army for the chance to save both cities, but also potentially losing both as well, or let Von Asaor fall in favor of a guaranteed victory at the capital? Thankfully, neither choice had to be made, as the lizard forces at the capital had been subdued, and the Hive's army was now free to assist the defense at Von Asaor. They were successful, only losing a handful of soldiers in the defense, and now it was time for the hive to finally go on the offense. The siege on Felona had begun. The hive were able to deliver some payback, nearly halving the lizard's population in Felona, but I had made the mistake of pushing too far south and were now surrounded. It was only a matter of time before their army fell. With the hive's army now greatly weakened, the lizards seized the opportunity to finish off what was left of Von Azeor. Without any resistance, it fell quickly. But even after this great victory, the lizard's lust for blood was not satiated. They were going after the whole, and there was to be no mercy. They started by tearing down the hive's monuments. First to go was the statue of the great hive deity, James. And second to go was whoever this guy is. Hull's numbers dropped very quickly. With only 3 population left, they were just seconds away from extinction. Would the last remaining population be able to escape on the boats to avoid their almost certain death? Or would they just sit there? Yeah, they're just gonna sit there. And with one final cry, the hive was no more, and the lizards reigned supreme leaders over the island. They breathed a sigh of relief, for the war was finally over. But little did they know, the war had just begun. My name's Millen with 2 L's, and thank you for watching.